Yeah, this is super serious.
Yeah, super sweaty tournament report coming in.
No fun was had.
Welcome to a tournament report. Myself, the mayor, and my friend here, OT. Fucking hell.
Oh fuck! I nearly said it at the beginning, but I had a premonition you were going to get it wrong.
Welcome to a tournament report. Myself and OT went to a tournament in Cardiff called War of Wrath 2023. Say hello, OT.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, yes. And I'm the mayor, of course. Onod's abandoned us this time because we're sick of his non-existent hot takes on how our games went. So we just thought we'd run through this tournament ourselves.
Good lord.
So what we're going to do is we're just going to go through our list and each of the games and do a quick recap of the games, what happened, the interesting points, our takeaways, and just how the event went. Yeah. Anything to say at this point, OT?
No, you've summed it up pretty well.
Brilliant.
Yeah. We just get into it because it'll be interesting to see, reflect on how it went.
Okay, so I'm going to cut to the first image of the first game here. So the tournament was a 1,100 point tournament, so we had 550 points each. Our original plan was to bring dwarves, wasn't it?
Thralls and Iron Hills, but we literally couldn't be bothered.
I didn't have enough built or any of it painted, and OT had other priorities, and I was just like, should we just take something else? So we kind of ran through the list. Something better. We ran through the list of what we had, and we decided that actually this was probably going to be the easiest one to bring the painting to completion, because I just had to paint like 6 more dudes, and these are like literally the easiest models I've ever painted in my life. Literally just needed 2 paints for them. So I painted those up. We decided to take this because it's our favourite Legendary Legion. If you haven't watched any of our Legendary Legion videos,
follow the link here.
Oh god, now I've got to insert a link. So we really love this Legion for a lot of reasons, and we decided it was going to be the best to take for this tournament for us. So the list is split into 2 halves, obviously. My half being the primary force, because I've taken this list quite a lot. I've got Aragorn and the King of the Dead. I think Aragorn's got 6 dudes with shields and 3 with shield and spear. And then the King of the Dead has similar, but with a horse. I can't remember the exact numbers. And then what was your force, OT?
So I had Gimli and Legolas on my side. We stacked Gimli's warband and put a banner and a rider in there, so we got max value from the banner. And then we had a few dudes and a rider with Legolas, just to make sure he was defended in case he got dropped in vulnerable position. But it was... Gimli was my main focus, and then Leggy around to snipe some horses.
Leggy was our one drop at the beginning, wasn't he?
And just see what they did after.
I do feel like in at least one of the games, he could have done with an extra couple guys potentially, but it all worked out in the end.
Yeah.
So that was our force, and the tournament has 3 games. The first game and the last game are randomly selected missions from the singles missions. And then the
good scenarios.
Good scenarios. And then the second game is randomly selected from the doubles scenarios. Fortunately, was quite... Yeah, I think we got one of the best ones because it may as well have been a singles, because it didn't exactly split our forces up like a lot of the doubles scenarios do. So mission 1, destroy the supplies. And as you can see, we're facing off against the Last Alliance, which... It's become a bit of a meta, hasn't it?
Yeah, and I think we saw why in this game. We'll probably explain more further down the line, but it's just, the fact they had the heroes they did and the number of dudes they did was it was a lot to deal with. It was a lot to deal with.
There's just so many. They have everything really. The only thing they don't. I mean, they've got magic. I was about to say the only thing they don't have is magic, but they've got Elrond. So this army was not Sealdir, the other guy. What's his name?
Elendil.
with a load of dudes and a banner. Then you've got Error Store over here somewhere with a load of elves and a banner. And then you've got, I think there was just a captain, wasn't there? Captain and
a Numenor captain, wasn't it? Yeah.
With some dudes, and then Elrond with some dudes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they've got a lot of fight 5, which, fight 5 and what are the men fight 4? I think they are.
Men are fight 4, strength 4.
So they're all higher fights. And they're all courage 4 or 5 because they've got a warhorn somewhere as well, haven't they?
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're high courage, they're high defense, they're high fight, they're high numbers. Like, it's just they've got everything. They've got bows.
Oh, the +1 courage comes from the Numenor army bonus, I think, doesn't it, rather than a warhorn? But yeah, it was.
I think the elves had a warhorn as well, potentially.
Oh my days!
But I can't remember exactly. Maybe it was just one of the other games.
Maybe they just have really high courage.
Yeah, maybe they just have high courage. Either way, we were basically killing them on 5s, and they're killing us on 6s or 6s by 4s. So destroy the supplies. You can see there are 3 objectives here, here, and here on their side, and we've got 3 objectives here under Legolas and behind this building. You might also notice the inclusion of some little resin dragons. And
really impactful, as it turns out.
Yeah, we'll come on to those, but essentially for this mission you've got to defend your own 3 objectives and try and demolish your opponent's 3 objectives. So I'm just going to play this little video clip. Hopefully this won't be laggy. So just do a little sweep of the battlefield. You can see the position of all our models. This is like the first turn. Now we're moving up on the left. There he is, the man himself. And obviously we're going to be hoping to get a sneaky shot from Legolas. So
that horse.
Straight onto the second clip, but essentially looking at the battlefields from the beginning, our plan, I think, was we've got some cav around the outside and we're just hoping to burst through somewhere and destroy a supply and probably defend the left flank with Gimli.
Because that was our sort of plan, wasn't it? Like, I mean, the unfortunate thing we ran into was I suspect their plan was almost exactly the same, very weirdly quite similar strategies for both the armies. I think we were a bit more durable, and especially with our plan to like just basically defend with Gimli and then kind of push up a bit more on that right hand side with Aragorn and the King of the Dead, I think was sort of where we're hoping to end up. Yeah,
and I mean Gimli's pretty tanky, but they've got so many models everywhere that I feel like if they just swarmed up, that like a model could have slipped past if they tried. But as we'll see. So I'm gonna skip to the next video bit here. So just showing off not Isildur, Elendil again. The captain over there in red. So here we've got everyone sort of moved up, and Legolas is having a pot shot over here at
Elrond's
horse. Gimli's on the left there, moving up, and then on
my
the
hand
right,
on the left hand side.
Everything's just sort of moving up. They've got a cav lurking in the back. Oh, we should explain the dragons as well, shouldn't we?
Yeah, so dragons essentially, they start off neutral, and you get points if you're able to tame them. In order to tame them, you have to move into range, and then you one model per turn can roll a d6. If you roll a 4+, you get to bring it under your control. If you don't, if you get a 3 or a 2, nothing happens. If you roll a 1, you get set ablaze, which really became impactful at quite a few points actually during the day. And then basically, once you've tamed your dragon, it just gets harder for the opponent to claim. So it's still on a 4+ roll. But if they fail that roll, they're immediately set ablaze, so on a 3, a 2, or a 1. And yeah, it became a real risk to try and go in, especially with your heroes, on those dragons.
Yeah, so the range to tame them is 3 inches, and they'll start moving towards the nearest friendly model at the end of that team's movement phase. This game we played it slightly wrong. We played it at the end of the whole movement phase, but we only found out halfway through the game, so we just continued. Video being laggy. Where are we?
This is heading into combat, I think, isn't it? Or just before we go into combat.
Right, here we go. So another sweep. So we've got the all the models, and
Yeah, this was like a turn or two before we got into combat, isn't it? And I assume that's a priority role.
yes. So I think we've won
We
priority.
took priority. Yeah. Which I think we kind of wanted, didn't we? But like, yeah, we weren't entirely sure, because we were kind of pushing up, but in like a fairly cautious way. Like we weren't literally just headlong charging up the board. But yeah, and then a lot of it came down to like who was in range of having a shot at taming the dragon. I think that was a lot of what movement became about.
Yeah, so you can see here we've got some little rubber bands to represent who has the dragon, and all three of them have a yellow band, which is our opponents.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much how it stayed most of the game. So
yeah, it wasn't great.
No, it wasn't great. You can see Legolas and his friends were kind of stopping these random models from bursting through to this objective. Gimli and friends are coming up to challenge these models to protect the objective on the other side of this building. And on the top right there, we've got a cav flanking round the top. And we stayed out of range of this Elendil for a couple turns.
Nice.
Good save. And eventually he did make it in, but we held him up pretty well. I think he only killed 3 models the whole game.
Yeah, and even then he was like stuck on kind of the wrong end of our line, and it was, yeah, we were all right for the most part.
We mitigated him quite well. I was kind of surprised that they didn't try and just send him straight forward, ignore all our guys, and go for the objective. I think that would have been a smarter play. But
because like we only could have done so much to actually slow him down with those 3 heroic combats.
Yeah, there also wasn't like a ton of time. I mean, even at this point, I think there was maybe like half an hour left. And we were starting to think it's going to be tricky.
Yes, yeah.
So you can see they're moving forward. On this side, we had a rider.
Oh, little rider. Little rider that could.
We had a rider on both sides that were sort of fighting to get around, but never quite
fighting their own private battle.
Yeah, and then we just had a couple guys camping on the objective. OT had kept this banner quite far back because there's points for banner, and at this point in the game, we were thinking no one's going to get any points. They had 2 banners. So there was really nothing we could do to take theirs away. But, I mean, with Elrond lurking around, I think it was better to be cautious with it. And we had moved up to kind of between the trees, 2 forests at one point. And we were like, we won priority, and they were like, yeah, you can have it. Probably thinking we were going to come forward. And we were just like, let's just move back. Like, we don't need to fight on this side. We're probably not going to win against, that force.
Elrond and his boys. Yeah.
So you can see. Oh, this video is so laggy. You can see some more of the battlefield. So then there's this image, which is
the lines finally clashing.
Yeah, the lines finally clashing. We got some cav coming around. Woodland Creature held quite a lot on this right hand side.
They really did. I think I underrate it, to be fair. Like I think a surprising number of boards have that woodland on. And just being able to go straight through it with infantry is really impactful.
It is, and woodland's like probably easily the most common area terrain. In the kind of Middle Earth SBG scene, it's the easiest one to put together. It's the nicest to look at. Like there are hills, but hills are basically just open ground. There's very few like piles of rocks for like cave dweller and mountain dweller. There's these buildings are basically impassable. Like forests are the most interactive scenery pieces and the most common. So Woodland Creature was really helpful.
We were praying for a flipping water feature in any of these games with our Spectral Walk, but no chance. We should. I still say we should bring our own terrain. Just whack a big river down and hope they don't notice.
Yeah. Just ask them to turn around for a quick minute.
And,
so here we've got. Legolas is sniping the horse. That's what this is.
Yeah.
So it was a hit, and then
you
need a 5 to wound. And you got it.
It was my dice. They are OP. It was my second crack at it. I did fail to wound the first time, but it was. It's so impactful. Like getting, I think like Leggy maybe is slightly overpoint for what you get, but that ability to just threaten a hero's horse at all times,
especially when you have no other bows.
Yeah, yeah,
It's the
and you could tell like
bow, isn't it?
yeah, they were so nervous about him the whole game though. Like they would we would spend like 5 minutes trying to line him up perfectly so they couldn't see him through a tree.
Yeah.
And it was really impactful.
Yeah. So here you can see what's left of the left-hand flank, and I think this might even be the last turn.
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, because Gimli's just killed 2 guys. Oh no, he's just failed to kill the horse, hasn't he? On this turn.
Yeah, and then the following turn he got trapped.
There was a really nice combat that we'd managed to make because they brought the 2 elf warriors forward, and they were in charge range. I'm not sure why they just left it, so we just jumped on one of them with Gimli and like 5 guys, and then combated off. Gimli then failed to kill the horseman. But our 3 warriors up there around the dragon had managed to gank a guy, because at this point we're thinking, well, our 2 warriors in the bottom left, even if we have like 2 or 3 more turns, which was looking unlikely at this point, Elrond's not going to be
because we were running out of time.
So they've got the other 2 dragons. You can see on the far right they've got a little dragon with a token there. So we really need to take the dragons. That's our only chance here.
Yeah.
I think in the following turn I did manage to fail to get it.
Yeah.
But you can see in this middle section, we've got Legolas and friends coming up. They did pretty well fighting off the people who were trying to get through. Isildur, fucking Elendil's here.
I loved how you kept doing it in the game as well, and like it wasn't triggering them fully, but every time they were like, "Nope."
It's the worst model they've taken. Aragorn and the King were
desperately
trying to get through. In the last turn of the game, they did manage to break through, but I mean it was too late.
It was.
What's this roll for? You rolled a 6 or something. I don't know. Again, you can see. Actually, here's a good image. If it's not blurry as hell, you can see Aragorn over here. I mean, they brought their 2 elves back because I reckon 2 more turns and we'd be over there.
Yeah.
And we had a cav around the back as well. So yeah,
I mean,
this was the last turn.
We were applying so much pressure by the end of the game. Like their lines had finally cracked. Oh, this was Gimli, I think, wasn't it? To wound.
Gimli just killed 2 guys.
Yeah, they surrounded him and were going for a wound, and then just absolutely obliterated him.
Yeah. So it was a 1-1 draw.
Too little, too late.
Because we both had a banner. You can see they had a captain and a Numenorum coming down this bottom for this bottom objective. We were holding them off from our objectives. We were breaking through pretty hard on the right hand side, but we just didn't have enough time. So they had all 3 dragons. You can see they managed to keep the dragon on the left as well. So it was actually a 1-4 loss, including the dragons, unfortunately. I don't know. I feel like if the game kept going on, eventually we might have won, but they might have also got that bottom objective. I feel like
they were running out of guys quicker than we were. Like, I think the problem is, I think in order for a conclusive result, I think we'd have needed at least another 45 minutes. And that's just not something that happens in a tournament format, unfortunately.
No, there were too many dudes to move around, and I think as the first game of the day, maybe both teams were like thinking about stuff a little bit too much, not on purpose, just because it was fairly. You need to think about these things, especially when we're playing on a 6x4 board instead of a 4x4. Every time you place a warband for deployment, it has much bigger consequences. Yeah, if you place it in the wrong place, you're screwed. As we'll find out in the last game
later on.
So yes. Okay. So now we're going to move on to the second game, which I don't know if it was my favourite game, but I think it might be. I think that the first game was my least favourite.
Yeah.
But I still think it was a fine game. There wasn't any nastiness or sweatiness particularly. It was all just it was just a bit slow in terms of actually stuff.
Immediately afterwards, I said it was dull, and I think that was unfair. But I think it was just such a slow-paced game. Like I don't think I've ever played a game where it didn't feel like much was really happening. And it was just the quite very fine margin. And everyone was being really careful, fully, understandably, because it was so close. But yeah, it wasn't the high point of the day.
No, I think this was probably my favourite moment of the day.
Yes.
So our opponents, my favourite opponents from the day. Really old friend who I haven't seen for ages. We played against Chris. Shout out to you, Chris, if you're listening.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. Ding that bell. So this is Total Conquest. It's a Maelstrom mission. There are now 4 dragons in the table instead of 3.
I'm not sure how I feel about the exponential dragon growth throughout the day, but
I'm not sure either, but it was a quirky addition to the tournament. I feel like certain armies will have done better with it. You know, higher model count where you don't mind getting on fire, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Pro tip: don't use expensive units to pick them up.
No.
So our opponents had to deploy first here, which was perfect for us. They deployed on the line with, you can see Lurtz over there. So that their army isn't full Isengard. They've got Isengard allied with Mordor. They had, is it Kardouche?
Kardouche, Shagrat, and I think just a Morannon captain.
Yeah, and then plenty of dudes. Nothing particularly special, just a lot of Morannons, I think, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yep. And maybe a couple trackers, a couple bowmen or something.
And
then this Isengard force, you can see they've got a troll, they've got Frascu, Lurtz, a banner, pikes, shields, crossbows. So they're deployed on the line, and as some of our viewers might be thinking, why have they put the troll in the front there? Well, I was thinking the same thing when they deployed, and I knew exactly what to do here because I have used the Aragorn King combination to kill a Balrog in a turn. And I was fairly confident we were just going to kill this troll. So I said to OT...
I think fairly is an understatement. I think it's the most confident I've ever seen you in my entire life.
I was just like... I don't know
you're
if
like, that troll's dead.
That troll's dead, yeah. I mean, it has no fate. So, and the king, if we win combat, which we will, because Aragorn strikes, and as long as he doesn't roll a 2, he'll strike higher than
all
the troll.
Of his might.
He'll strike higher than the troll. And then the King of the Dead... assuming we win, he wins on a 4 because it's courage 4 down to 3 and strength 4 against defense 3, so that's 4s with 2 dice. We just need 1 4 up and he's dead, and he's got a might as well, so actually it's 1 3 up and the troll's dead. But actually we used his might to combat, didn't we? We did. So
not only were we confident we were going to kill the troll, we were so confident we were like heroic combat.
I just felt like with OT's dice rolling, we were pretty sure we were going to get through there. So
there were some real OT moments in this one. I got to say, those Rivendell dice worth their weight in gold.
And our opponents were very, very, very unlucky.
Unlucky. There were some horrific rolls.
I had a pretty bad moment as well, but we'll come on to that. OT hasn't forgiven me. So this is turn 1. We won. No, did we win priority? I can't remember. I think we did, because...
I think we did, and we moved forward, and they let us have it.
Because then they moved the banner to the left, didn't they? Essentially, we've done a nice wraparound. I don't think they ended up charging us very much with the crossbows, because it's obviously hard to charge with Terra anyway. We charged in everywhere we wanted. We got some extra supports on our heroes here. So let's play the vid. It's just a little panorama.
And the bonkers thing is with Harbinger, Uruks are only courage 3, so actually, even those regular courage tests become such a barrier.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
Uruks
real
go
good.
Down to courage 2.
Yeah,
because they start.
Oh, are they courage 3 base? Oh my days, yeah.
And Orc Warriors are base 2, and they go down to 1.
And they're courage 1.
So yeah, Army of the Dead versus any evil faction is just complete laughs. This video just loves skipping around, doesn't it? So here we are then. So the troll's gone. Oh.
Yeah.
No.
Instantly.
Oh, there we go. So yeah, troll's dead, and we combated forward into a couple of pikes on the right-hand side, which the king ended up killing single-handedly. And Aragorn combated into the banner and a pike. OT wasn't 100% convinced of this move. But I assured him that Aragorn
it would be fine,
both, and it would be fine. Aragorn did end up killing the banner and the pike, fortunately.
Yeah,
which meant they were bannerless in the middle of the board,
which was huge.
Which was bonkers. They're higher fight than us, but when you're rolling 1 dice against 2, and we've
even
got
3
with
3 with those supports as well.
Yeah, so it was pretty good.
Pretty strong.
Yeah, so this was at the end of the combat. You can see the crossbows are moved out. I think perhaps they were thinking, well, if our guys die, we can shoot to combat, or rather shoot the ghosts. But even if they can shoot to combat anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Thing is, they're killing their own guys on 5s, and they're killing us on 6s. So still not great odds.
No.
So then we've got a bit further on in the game. This is the fateful turn, OT, but let's describe what's going on the board for a second, because it very quickly became a skirmish battle,
an absolute clusterfuck.
So what do we talk about where things came on in the first turn? So
I can't remember who had to drop first. Was it them or was it us?
They had to drop first.
They had to drop first.
I remember because I remember thinking, this is brilliant.
Yeah. So basically, they deployed initially in the middle, your primary forces, and then your secondary forces had to drop after. They rolled for it, didn't they? And they got a 2,
which to might it.
That chose not to might it with Kardash's only might point. So then we were like, fuck it, put them right in the top right corner. So as you can see, that little green patchy field up there was where they deployed, and we were like, okay, that's really nice, we can deal with that force later. Then they brought Shagrat in down the bottom of your screen, and their sort of Morannon spare warband over on the left hand side. And that was really nice because we got to react to all of those, and we were like, okay, we can just pick the force that we think we can get rid of most easily. Yeah,
so I think Legolas came on first, didn't he? Because if
that's
Legolas
what he did. Yeah,
Gimli would need to use his might potentially to come and help Legolas. So fortunately, I think we got to choose where Legolas came on. It didn't make sense to come, I think it was north or south, so where Shagrat is or at the top. We didn't really fancy Legolas and his warband's chances against Shagrat and his lads, so he came on behind because we could, maybe do a sneaky shot into a couple of guys and contest for this far left objective. We figured, they might want to split their forces up. Maybe Leggy and his friends can take them on, and then Gimli, I think, could come on anywhere potentially. I think we might have rolled a 6. I can't remember, or maybe it was north or south. But I remember debating between trying to take on Shagrat's warband or just Kardush's. Kadoosh. And because Gimli's going to have an easier time against Kardush's warband. And we also didn't have very good access to the objective in the top right. We decided to go for the top right, sort that warband out, because we were really smashing everything in the middle.
Centre at this point.
And we just thought, we're going to have killed all of this by the time they get there, and then we can deal with them. So if I move to the next image, where is it? Here it is. So the fateful combat. So for a couple of turns, Aragorn was surrounded, but we managed to peel off their guys so that Aragorn was in a one-on-one with a warrior. On this fateful turn, I decided, actually, I'm just going to pin Lurtz with one guy. Lurtz was on the right here, fighting a random guy. And Aragorn, we charged into Vrasku and the pikemen, thinking, well, this will be fine because Aragorn's a higher fight, Vrasku's got 1 might, Lurtz has 1 might. They could combat with Lurtz into him, but that means that they're not striking because Vrasku doesn't have a strike, and we've still got a might, so it's probably not going to be an issue.
It's going to be fine.
It's going to be fine. Lurtz combated. They thought, well, fuck it, maybe he'll whiff. Lurtz combated off of his one guy. He did manage to kill him, needing a 6, of course. Combated into Aragorn, now trapping him. And I think I rolled a 4 high.
You did.
So they rolled a 6, which meant I couldn't even might it to a 6. And obviously Aragorn's not got his armour in this one, so he just died. They just did 6 wounds to him.
And I've never seen your face drop quite that quickly. It was just like, oh.
I was just like, this will be fine. I just rolled it like I always do, like I don't care, so that the dice gods can't mess with me. But they saw through that facade and realised that I really did care, and they decided to fuck me. So Aragorn died, which was pretty bad because his banner was doing pretty well in the middle. and obviously now they've still got their two big heroes. So we were in a spot of trouble.
Yeah. However, I think this was a weird moment because you lost a lot of confidence, and I was still there, just like, actually, I think we're going to be fine. Like, I think we're going to be okay.
Yeah, I mean, I was always pretty sure we were going to win this game, but it was just like
it was a surprising moment.
I wasn't expecting that to happen, and
yeah,
I mean, I was still fairly confident, but I didn't. I mean, Aragorn definitely would have helped seal the deal, but I mean, we managed to do it anyway. So as you can see, it was an 11-1 win, 13-2 with the dragons. We had 2 dragons; they had 1. Oh no, we had 3 dragons, so it must have been 14-2.
Yep.
So essentially, what happened is we broke them, and then everyone ran away.
Yeah. In the most spectacular fashion.
Yeah, I mean, up here, Legolas and his 2 mates were... I mean, the fact they'd broken did come as a very pleasant surprise, because I hadn't really been keeping track of that or thinking about it. And Legolas here was facing down about 12 orcs on this side.
He really was. He really was.
And their captain fled, despite having his might and his will left. And then all but 1 orc ran away, and then this orc failed his charge against the 2 guys. Bottom left here, all the orcs got cleaned up by these 3 guys. Bottom right, a couple orcs got cleaned up by these guys. There's 1 Morannon over there left. Top right, you can see we've got that objective as well. And we've got the middle objective on numbers. So we had every objective, but we contested to win the middle one, and we'd broken them. So there really wasn't anything they could do at this point.
No.
The king, as you can see, got knocked down by Shagrat, but wasn't wounded. We still had our banner. Finally, Gimli was starting to arrive. After his
that was a slightly unfortunate part of this game, was Gimli's marathon from sort of the far quarter over to the centre.
Yeah,
I think he got into like 2 combats.
The issue was, because this game ends on 25%, we didn't particularly want to risk bringing Gimli into the middle to use his dudes and his fighting prowess and just hope that all their guys flee on all the objectives. We wanted to make sure we secured as many objectives as we could, regardless of them potentially passing courage tests, just to secure the win, and we did. So a big win there. More victory points than is physically possible usually.
Yeah, which is nice.
Yeah, and the victory points from the dragons counted towards the point difference, so that is good.
It was really adding up. Like, the dragons were pretty impactful by the end of the day.
Yeah, definitely. Which leads us on to our last game. The last game was Lords of Battle, so the single scenario. In this game, you are basically counting wound tally against your opponents. If you double it or triple it, then you get more points. I think there's also points for like wounding leader or something, and not a banner.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
No points for banner.
But there are 5 dragons this time. So
fuck my life.
You can see. So I'll just. There we go. So our opponents. It's quite an interesting board. Our opponents had to choose board side and deployed first. We were actually standing on the side of the table that they ended up wanting to deploy in. So we had to swap around, and they were like, "Oh, it's just." We didn't care, obviously, but we were just like, "Ugh, it might be one of those games." It didn't. They were. It
wasn't one of those games.
No, it wasn't one of those games. It's just, I was just thinking, God, they're going to smash us. It feels like they know what they're doing. They really want this side of the table for some reason, and I'm not really sure why. Because not only did they deploy their ballista behind a hill, which you might think blocks line of sight. I'm not sure why they put him up there. But they deployed this in the top right, and I jokingly said to OT, let's just deploy in the opposite corner. And what I meant was like the absolute corner, and just like camp there, snipe a guy with Legolas's bow, and then run away. Which I don't think would have actually worked, but I was just memeing really. And then we realised, actually,
that was legit.
Do we need to go and combat that ballista? Because they had to deploy after the ballista, because the ballista deploys before kind of they get to deploy anything, I think. Oh no, they deployed the ballista, and then we deployed
They
Legolas.
dropped the ballista. Yeah, they dropped the ballista first.
I measured up to halfway, and halfway was on the tip of the top corner of this building. And we were like, well, clearly we can go on the top of that building. We defined all the terrain beforehand. And so Legolas just deploys up there. You can deploy up to halfway. And then we just put Legolas' 3 mates around him to prevent any eagles coming up. Now, the eagles need line of sight to charge someone, so they can't just hop up and sit in a space because they'd be in someone's control zone. They could see Legolas from wherever they were, but they couldn't get into base contact with Legolas, so it didn't matter. And fortunately, the little what are they called? Castellations on the building. The
crenellations.
They're castellations.
Crenellation. Okay, castellations.
We'll go for castellations. Comment below why we're wrong. So fortunately, Legolas's head is hidden from the ballista, and we managed to hide the others from the ballista as well. Then they deployed Durin on the right, I believe. Is that right? No.
Yep.
No, I think they deployed...
Durin was over here on the right-hand side by the ballista, and on the left-hand side they had a dwarf king and the king's champion.
But I think they deployed the 2 right-hand warbands and the one behind the building before we... Yeah, I'm pretty sure...
yeah, and then the eagles they save for the end.
Yeah, so I think it was ballista was down first, and then Durin, and then we deployed Legolas, and then behind the building they deployed the king's champion and his dudes. Or was it a captain? I think it was maybe a captain behind there.
Oh, they did have a captain, didn't they? A little, the shield guy, yeah.
Or no, they had a dwarf king, didn't they? And I don't know. They deployed someone behind it. I think it might have been a captain. So in response, we were thinking, well, we could make it look like we're going to deploy on both sides still, and then just deploy on the left. So I moved all the models that weren't deployed to the right hand side, as if to sort of get them ready to deploy there. I don't think they fell for it particularly, but I just wanted to try. Then we deployed Gimli's warband on the left, because the most likely thing they'd expect is that we'd then deploy Aragorn and the king together on the right-hand side. So we deployed Gimli on the left, because he's got the biggest warband in the secondary force. Then they deployed the king's champion. And at this point we're thinking, okay, they're probably not falling for it. We can't now deploy something on the right because we want to commit to the left, so we ended up just deploying the King of the Dead. In case they decided to deploy on the right for some reason. They didn't. They deployed their Dwarf King on the left still. So I'll just rewind the video so we can see. And then we, of course, deployed Aragorn on the far left. We'd at each point where we deployed it, I was trying to make it look like that was the last warband to go down on that side by putting the cav on the flank. So you can see that the cav here was from Gimli's warband deployment, and then the cav on the far left is from the King of the Dead's warband deployment. But of course, Aragorn then came up behind. This is the first turn, and rather than moving in and kind of funneling us, they pulled back, and I wasn't sure if this was because they were trying to get back to a point where maybe their ballista can get a line of sight down range on us, or whether it was because they actually wanted a bigger surface area on us. But I felt like that was better for us, so we weren't really sure what they were doing, and we were just kind of happy to let them move back. I think we might have even lost a move off for this, I'm not sure. But yeah, they pulled back, so that was absolutely fine with us. And
so they won priority and then moved back, didn't they? You can see that from the priority roll on the right hand side that they won priority, and then we were like, sod it, just see what they do, and they just moved back.
That was it, yeah, because we didn't really mind if they moved forward. Ideally, I think we would have liked a bigger surface area, which is what we ended up having. So it's currently essentially our entire army against their entire army minus the ballista and Durin's warband, which are probably the scariest parts.
Yeah,
and the eagles can obviously go where they want. So we weren't
well, but they couldn't entirely, because there was some we did some fairly nice manoeuvres to try and minimise the space they could move into.
Yes, so so we were constantly keeping an eye on that. You see Legolas up here and his friends forever. So yeah, this is the kind of battlefield. Oh yeah, it is a captain, look.
Yeah.
So, now, you're probably wondering why we've got little yellow markers on these models. Why don't you explain why that is and what this one is doing here?
Yeah, there were some pretty brutal rolls for the old Taming the Dragons here, and our opponent's eagle had a real rough time. It caught fire on the roll of a 1 on the second turn, and then it didn't move in order to roll on the floor, put itself out. However, while it was rolling on the floor, they thought, fuck it, let's try and tame that dragon again, where they rolled another 1, and once again were able to set themselves on fire.
I don't know why they didn't just make a fucking dwarf do it. Why are you doing it with your eagle again? Man. They just thought, that won't happen again, it'll be fine.
I could see their logic, but I was also like, oof, that's really bad. And yeah, I think it did actually wound the eagle once, didn't it? I think one wound did get through.
It did, which, as we'll find out later, actually mattered quite a lot.
Yeah. Especially when you're keeping track of the total wound count.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we didn't get.
Oh no, that's true. Yeah.
So it didn't matter. But the dwarf on the right hand side also caught fire. I'm pretty sure they tried for that objective at least. I think this dwarf ended up dying at the end of the turn.
Yes.
As well.
Yeah.
So they just got so unlucky. We basically gave up on these 2 dragons. We could try and contest the middle one, but we were kind of happy with having 2 dragons, letting them have 3. I think we were fairly confident we were going to be able to kill more, or at least do more wounds than they were. They did have the horn, which meant they're all courage 4. Is that right? 4 or 5?
Yep.
So we're winning them on 5s. They're winning us on 6s.
Oh well, hang on. It was because they start base courage 4.
Yeah.
Then with Harbinger, we brought them down to courage 3, which would be winning on 4s. But because of the Warhorn, they went back up.
Yeah.
To their original courage value.
And they've got some Iron Guards and a lot of Khazads. So the Iron Guard are already strength 4. They're needing 6s against us. Their Warriors are needing 6s by 4s, which is really nice for us. A lot of times, actually, that came through.
Really did.
For us. And their Khazad, obviously, I think they didn't have that many 2-handed Endurance. They didn't have many Khazads in there.
No.
And even the ones they did spent most of the game walking over to us. So it wasn't an issue.
Very slowly.
Yeah. So that was how we were going to play the game out. They've created this nice long thin line for us to attack with as many models as we can fit in on the left hand side. They've obviously got a banner and higher fight, which isn't ideal, but we're much more durable. They didn't end up doing a lot with their eagles for the early game because they put them behind this building. I think just waiting for an opportunity to strike. Maybe they were waiting for Durin to arrive. I'm not sure, but we made sure that our models weren't in line of sight, or if they were, that we had a plan to kind of deal with the eagle if it had hopped over.
Yeah.
Which ends up happening later. But in the early game, I think we managed to get a couple kills here and there. So let's see what the next image is. This is the point at which the eagle. So you can see the prone marker there, and Durin's finally wandering over. This was the second time that he caught fire. Legolas didn't. I think Legolas maybe sniped one model the entire game with his bow.
Yeah. Wasn't very impactful.
No, he basically got to shoot at supporting models pretty much every turn. You're probably wondering what the fuck's going on now. Well,
good question.
The middle of the game was quite intense, and we didn't end up taking very many pictures or videos. We did manage to bring the 2 dragon eggs to the top left here. At this point, I think they'd captured all of the other 3, which we were expecting. They never ended up getting up on this building with the eagles. This base here is an eagle base. We've got some...
True.
We'll come back to that in a sec.
I
just want to explain what else is happening, then we can come to that. So, Aragorn and the King of the Dead ended up fighting this Dwarf King most of the game, I would say.
Literally disgusting.
Our rolls were not great. I think
there was this one dwarf with a short bow who's you can't see because he's hidden under this eagle's wing, who took on 4 Warriors of the Dead, 4 turns in
yeah.
a row, killed 3 of them, and never lost a combat. It was ridiculous. Like,
it was quite fun though, because it was nice that there was like that bit of randomness that was on their side as opposed to ours.
Yeah.
Because most of the randomness was going our way.
Yeah.
They did get a nice hurl off, but didn't kill anyone. That's why there are 3 down models here. We pretty much ground down their force quite a lot. You can see we've got a lot less models than we started with, and I think that's because some of the Hearthguard ended up arriving, and some of the Strength 4 ended up getting 6s. Obviously, the Eagles did pretty well. Guaher especially combated a couple times and managed to kill a fair number of models. They realised near the end, they were like, we just need to kill loads of guys and try and break them. So I think we were a few models from breaking, but not as far as I would have liked. And I'll let you run through what happened with Leggy.
so, I mean, Leggy had done fuck all this game. Like, it was actually quite embarrassing, because we'd done this high-level strat. We were like, okay, we'll put him on top of this building. We'll put it so that no Eagles can charge him, and he'll basically just be like that guy in Saving Private Ryan, just sniping people from the top of the tower.
Forgot about that guy.
He killed one dude with a spear, so the one guy from the Vault Warden team, with and it took him like 6 rounds of shooting, and that's all he did. So he did fuck all game. And we realised, we're like, okay, we're running a bit low on might here, and Leggy's just fucking on top of a tower with 3 might, not taking a scratch. We should probably do something with him. And then we measured it out, and we were like, okay.
So this is the last turn of the game. And we lost priority, so they'd already moved. This Eagle with 2 wounds had already charged in the 2 guys here. And Legolas was sitting on top of the tower. What did we decide to do, AT?
Well, we measured it out, and we were like, okay, if he rolls a 6, he can jump off this tower, and he'll still have the move left to charge this Eagle. And we were like, okay, given we need him to strike, and we're probably going to need some might to win the fight, we need him to, like, bare minimum, we need him to roll like a 4 or a 5. Otherwise, we're not sure we're gonna might this up. And anyway, he rolled a nat 6 and charged in.
We got you to roll it with your fucking broken ribbon.
I literally, the final turn, you just sat back and you just like gave you the dice. We were like, go on, just roll, and it was pretty ridiculous. Like I think we had 7 or 8 combats, and even before we got to Leggy's combat, I'd killed like 5 or 6 dudes, and they were really close to breaking. I think they were like 1 or 2 models away at this point. And yeah, Leggy then charged in, struck up, rolled another 6 for that one, so went to fight 10, and then rolled another nat 6 and a 4 in the dual roll phase.
And then he needs 6s to wounds, and he rolls another 2 fucking 6s.
6s on 4 dice, and it was just like, yeah, I mean, it was pretty ridiculous. And I mean that really topped up our wound tally, because we were already a fair way ahead, but they that final turn
back in the middle of the game.
Yeah.
We were,
and when the Eagles put in some serious work in terms of the wound tally. But yeah, I mean after this, because at the start of this turn we weren't actually that far ahead, and I was a little bit worried. But by the end of it, we nearly tripled them because we'd done so many wounds, which was super nice. And yeah, Gimli stood up really well against Durin. Durin heroic combated into him. Gimli won the fight, and yeah, that really shut that down, which was nice. So yeah, it was a really solid game, and I think actually after the first couple of turns we were pretty nicely in control, and even the Eagles coming in later on weren't as impactful as perhaps they could have been.
Yeah, so I think we double their wounds? I can't remember.
We were well over doubling their wounds. I think they got like 13 or something, and we were low 30s, so we were actually quite close to tripling them.
Yeah, so it was a 5-0 win. I think we were very close to breaking them. I think they were like
they were one model off on the final turn, which was a little bit of a shame, but it was still really nice.
Yeah, so the result was a 5-0 win or a 7-3 with the Dragons, because they had 3 and we had 2. I think if the game had continued, eventually we would have just finished mopping them up, and I think we could have tried focusing down Durin. We finally killed the Dwarf King in this turn. You can see he's missing from the image.
Fucking hell, it took forever. It wasn't even like we were like losing fights either. We were winning the fights, and then Aragorn would just roll like 2 2s and a 1. It was like, well,
yeah, yeah,
not what we paid.
My rolling with Aragorn wasn't the best.
Your rolling with Aragorn was absolute trash. Like, I'm sorry, it was really poor.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Because you'd always win the dual roll and then just not wound. And it was like, oh, come on.
Yeah, I ended up just letting you roll most of the time. But no, a good tournament. So we ended up with 1 loss, 2 wins, 11th place out of 34 teams. Could have placed a bit higher if we got a bit luckier. But I mean, top third is pretty good. Yeah. My prediction for this was 2 wins and a loss. I was optimistically hoping for 2 wins and a draw, which technically we did get. Yes, minus the Dragons. So
I mean, there were loads of us. Like the points tally from this one was really interesting because there were so many people so close, and clearly like the Dragons had been the determining factor, and it would just have taken like a couple of Dragons going our way, and we'd have jumped up to like 8th or 9th. But yeah, I was really pleased with 11th, especially after the first game. I was a bit worried, but yeah, we brought it around pretty nicely.
Yeah, I think, against the Last Alliance in the first game, that's probably the hardest matchup, I would say. Originally, I was thinking it would just be elves with high courage, but because they're still strength 3, needing 6 by 4s instead of 6s, the strength 4 actually makes a huge difference. So
yeah. And literally wounding twice as quickly because there were actually, and I think it was a big advertisement for D8 was like there were a number of times where it was like they'd roll a 6 and be like yes, and we'd be like no, you still need that 4, and then
and then they wouldn't get it.
Yeah,
a lot of the time,
and it does just mean like we'll come on to talking about the individual units maybe in a second, but yeah, that D8 and the Terror is just, it's so demoralizing for your opponents to deal with because even if they charge and win the combat, like then to wound is such a pain in the ass as well.
Yeah, I can see why they're only fight 3 because
if we were fight 4, that would be insane.
They would probably be the best army in the game.
Yes, yeah. Because it was interesting talking to people. They were like, "What? They're only fight 3?" And we were like, "Yeah, but also you get all this other cool shit."
Yeah, and the fact they're winning on courage is just probably one of the most interesting mechanics in the game for an army.
Yeah,
So this is our tier list. Let's start at the bottom, shall we? Obviously, nothing was whiff. I feel like everything pulled their weight generally.
Yeah, everything did its job. The Cav, there wasn't a lot for them to do in the... No.
There wasn't any objective rushing that needed to happen other than the first game, and they were kind of fairly countered by the enemy Cav. But they're still a Warrior of the Dead. They just move a bit faster. I don't think we ended up getting many knockdowns. I think maybe there was 1 knockdown in the whole tournament.
There was one. There was a Khazagard in the final turn of the tournament who I knocked down and killed. But apart from that, they didn't really do much.
Yeah. So I mean, we had 3 of them, so you'd expect them to do like a bit more. But I think because just having the threat of their mobility was enough, and if we had come into some more mobility-based objective games, they would have probably placed higher.
They're honesty cav.
They're honesty cav, yeah. We probably could have done with less of them, but equally, they're not actually that much more expensive than just a normal guy.
Because you're paying 15, 16 points for a basic dude anyway, so actually whacking another, 8 or 9 points on top isn't too impactful.
Yeah. And then solid, we basically got everything apart from the warriors. So King of the Dead, Aragorn, Gimli, Legolas, and the banner.
Yeah.
They all did their role, but none of them single-handedly won the game in any particular way.
No.
They were all just fairly solid performers. If anything, I would have expected maybe for there to be that, aha moment. But obviously, the King and Aragorn killed a troll, but that's still only like 105 points. And the King of the Dead alone costs 100 points. So
they should be doing that.
They should be doing that, and Aragorn ended up dying in that game anyway.
Yeah.
There weren't any particularly high defense heroes that Aragorn ended up killing, mainly because I was whiffing. But having the 4-up is helpful. The King didn't end up insta-killing anyone apart from the troll. I don't think. Maybe the dwarf king on the last turn, but that's because he had one white anyway.
But we just weren't coming up against many multi-wound. Like, I mean, against, you know, Bay Awnings, maybe that rule's more impactful, but the problem is a lot of the time he was just against basic warriors who are only one wound anyway, so it doesn't actually matter too much.
Yeah, and
unfortunately.
Yeah, so, I mean, Aragorn was most useful for his banner. I feel like that almost brought him into Fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, that banner makes the list work. Without it, I think you actually really struggle. And like it got to the stage where we were kind of just like taking banner rolls for granted, in the same way that you start to take having Harbinger for granted, because that 12-inch range, like that banner just does, it does feel like it's everywhere.
For those of you who don't know, Aragorn is a 6-inch banner to spirits.
All spirits.
So. Obviously we took the normal banner because in the secondary force for Gimli, we expected there might be some force splitting up, and therefore a banner would be useful there, which I think it was in general, but also the banner is going to be used for our 3 non-spirit heroes. So Aragorn, Legolas and Gimli can still re-roll from that banner, which came into play a couple times, not very much.
Well, and if nothing else for VPs, like, I mean, I know the banner scenarios are a bit rare, but like it's always nice to have one around in case.
And then you've got Legolas and Gimli, who of course are just pretty solid in their own right. Legolas's Honesty Bow was really useful in the first game. Gimli, just solid fighter, like. Pretty much, they weren't really scared of taking anything on because they both have strike. They both got enough might. They've got
Gimli's D8.
Yeah, they've got great fight value. Like, they're just gonna beat out pretty much any other captain or hero around their points level in the game. And then of course we've got the Warriors of the Dead, the humble Warrior of the Dead. 16, 17. No. They're is it 15, 16, 17 points? Because it's everyone had a shield, so I mean, they're just really solid. Like D8 is incredible. Winning against Courage is incredible. We didn't end up using any special strikes, which perhaps we could have in a couple of instances, but I don't think it would have made much difference. Causing Terror just meant we could pick fights.
That Harbinger Terror combination, it's ridiculous. Like, it was.
If you're an evil army, you're just like
and against dwarves as well. Like, dwarves are quite high courage, but suddenly they've gone from D7 to D4, and it's like, bloody hell! You pay all this premium, all this points with dwarves for that high defense, and you're just instantly negated. Like, it just doesn't matter. I mean, the funny one was the flipping Vault Wardens up at D9, and we were like, nope.
That's
where you're wrong.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I mean, it was a good tournament. What did you think? Because I've obviously played this army quite a lot. What were your impressions before the tournament of this army, and how do you feel about them now?
I thought we would be more reliant on heroes than we were. I thought, basically, the Warriors of the Dead would be super solid, and we'd kind of just absorb with and like counter with our warriors with the terror stuff and just slow everybody down. And then Aragorn, the King of the Dead, would just go nuts, charging around the board with Aragorn's might. What actually kind of happened was that you use Aragorn and the King to, if you can, get some high value targets and almost like keep them under control because they can't come within certain range, otherwise they'll die. And then actually just your warriors just go through stuff, and because they don't really get wounded, like most people are going to be wounding them on a 6x4, you just sort of can gradually just push through, and nobody can really stop you, which was quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you've basically got an army of mini Vault Wardens. Or an army of fucking Iron Hill dwarves with permanent shield wall.
Yeah. Who are effectively, I mean, I guess kind of the way, it's not the same thing, but kind of the way to think of them is they're a bit like, I guess, kind of strength 6 almost against most people. Like it's a bit like they're You know, I mean, Burly Khazad, you're normally expecting to wound on either 5s or 4s, and it's the same here. Like, you're normally expecting your guys to be wounding on 5s or 4s. The difference here is, you know, you've got spears, you can move 6, you've got terror. Yeah, like, crazy good.
Yeah. I think I'm always surprised how good it feels with the Warriors. Like you said in the first game, how does it feel to not have your guys die? And I was just thinking, yeah, well, I've just played like probably 20 games in a row with Goblin Town, where literally my guys just melt if they lose a combat.
Yeah.
At one point, in one of the battles with Sebastian, he was winning me on 2s, re-rolling 1s, and yeah, it did not feel good.
No,
it wouldn't have been as easy against the Army of the Dead, I don't think. And it just felt like we had a lot of control. Like,
yes,
it wasn't like we were at our opponent's mercy at any particular point. We always had the tools to deal with what they had, and we always stood a chance of winning. It was just a case of can we manipulate the board in such a way to get that win, and we did in 2 out of 3 of the scenarios, and I feel like we were unlucky to not on the first one, but if we had, we would have been playing against other opponents, so whether the other 2 games would have been a win is another matter.
But
yeah, so anything else that we can talk about for the tournament, or
no, I think that pretty much sums it up. Like, I think having never played it before, I didn't quite know what to expect going in, but was really pleasantly surprised by how strong the army as a whole felt.
Yeah, and it was a fun tournament. I mean, the dragons, I don't know how I feel about them. I feel like they were too random. I felt like there wasn't an easy way to secure them. Maybe because I feel like we got just unlucky in the first game, but no, it was a good tournament. And as tournaments go, so far you've been to maybe 4 or 5 now.
Yeah, 5 this year, I think.
How did it rank in terms of tournament going?
And it's hard to quantify, but this one definitely had like the nicest vibe. Like, it felt like it was competitive without people going over the top.
Yeah, there were no 100% sweaty army lists. They were all fairly well rounded. There was no there was one bear, which was Sebastian. And they were playing 100 points under. So
and still doing all right, to be fair. So
yeah, they did win 2 out of 3 games. So
but it was nice. Like, there were mummoks there. There were Ents there. There was a weird list with Tom Bombadil, and like that, I really liked that. Like, it just felt. Whereas the one we went to near Bristol was super well run. Like, really slick event, but it's just so many Dragon Emperors, so many Beornings, and it was just like, oh my god, like I'm playing the same matchup again. I can't deal with it.
No, so a good tournament, and I think we'll round it off there then. So
sounds good.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. It's goodbye from me and goodbye from OT.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks very much. Doing that bell.